social change to net zero emissions. A more detailed title would be, do we need change to reach net zero by 2050? Welcome to the podcast, Ronald Stein.
Armando, glad to be aboard.
Ronald, is net zero by 2050 a distant dream?
It's a big dream because, we had a net zero society before the 1800s. And I don't know if we want to go to net zero because everybody keeps thinking that wind and solar is going to get us to net zero. But Armando, as we've talked before, wind and solar only generate electricity. They make nothing for society. And today, society is a very materialistic society with all the products we have and all the transportation systems we have and the planes and trains, and everything is made with those oil derivatives that come out of oil. And everything that needs electricity is made with oil. The iPads, the defibrillators, X-ray machines, the televisions, it's all made with oil. So it's like I say, we can have net zero society and just electricity, but without oil, there'll be nothing to electrify. Nothing will be around that needs electricity. So it is a pipe dream, a fool's game.
But net zero is a social requirement, isn't it? Or is only a politician requirement? What exactly means?
It's a total political requirement. Yeah, the politicians and consequently the policy makers have bought into this net zero. Everybody wants to reduce emissions, but the only way to reduce emissions is to change our social lifestyle. Because if you remember, you weren't around in 1800, neither was I, but before 1800, we had that zero emission society. There was no coal-fired power plants, no natural gas power plants, no medical industry, no electronics. And the society we have today is predicated on, everybody say, the climate's changing. Well, yeah, it's been changing for 8 billion years. And, the galactic forces can keep it changing. But we have a society that, life longevity has increased. People live a healthier, wealthier lifestyle. And, getting rid of all the emissions to go to net zero, for what? If we go to net zero, we don't have a replacement for crude oil. So to go to net zero, you have to eliminate all the emissions, which eliminates crude oil and everything that's made from it. But if you get rid of crude oil and get rid of our materialistic society, Armando, will lose billions of people from starvation, malnutrition, weather-related fatalities. Like say, we have a longevity of like 80 years of age, and that'll revert back to 40 years of age without the medical industry.
So you mean that the society doesn't know about this program of net zero and the emissions and the oil functions? Politicians could know a little bit more, universities, professors, researchers, who in reality know about this?
Well, we've talked about this before. There's no conversations. I was interviewed in New York a couple weeks ago, and the first question to me was, "Hey, Ron, we understand you're pro-oil." I said, "Wait a minute, I'm not pro-oil. I'm pro the products we get from oil. That's got us to the society we have today. And I want to keep my iPhone, even if the oil industry disappears. I want to be able to get a new one, next year." And that's something that people are not willing to converse. There's a total confusion about the use of the word energy. When I talk, I try not to use the word energy too much because it's either electricity or it's products. Because wind and solar can generate electricity if the breezes are blowing, the sun is shining, but they can't make anything. They can't make tires, they can't make insulation, they can't make my iPhone. And whereas oil, on the other hand, does something totally different than wind and solar. Oil is virtually never used to generate electricity. Coal is and natural gas is, but oil isn't. Oil is black, cruddy tar, unless you can make something useful out of it. And through man's, ingenuity, we've been able to refine it, and we heat it, and they beat it, and they crack it, and they do all kinds of things with it. But it comes out as oil derivatives that makes toothpaste, plastic cups, everything else.
With all due respect, and I consider that you are my friend, so it sounds that you are against reduction of CO2.
Against reduction of CO2? I see nothing wrong with it. CO2 has got us to a very green planet because, when you take a look at CO2, we're right at the point of like 400 parts per million, and life cannot exist below 150 parts per million. So if you get rid of CO2, you get rid of humanity and all living things. But when you take a look, is CO2 good or bad? Take a look at the greenhouses. They elevate the CO2 level within the greenhouse to like 1,200 parts per million to allow the plants to grow faster and bigger, and et cetera, et cetera. Submarines, the space shuttle, their CO2 levels are much higher than 400 parts per million. And I guess it's good for the astronauts. It's good for the, people in the, submarines. But no, I personally, I'm not a CO2 enemy. I think CO2 is actually good for the Earth. It allows us to grow plants faster and quicker. And, Rhonda, we got 8 billion people on this planet we got to feed. And I think a higher CO2 level would allow us to do that.
Let me be more provocative for you. When I see that factories, manufacturing plants emitting tons of smoke, and so is not a problem.
To me, that's the microscopic approach, because the world is big. I have in my office the globe, and I'm constantly looking at it because, the globe. Excuse me, had to get my globe. This is a big Earth. It's mostly water, and there's very little land, and most of the land's uninhabitable. And so, you could microscopically, look at something that's, black tar, and I don't pay much attention to it because, again, it's so microscopic. When you take a look at the entire Earth, you can elevate anything. And, back in, when I had my first car, it was a smoker. I remember seeing refineries when they first opened. They were smokers. Now they got technology and they eliminate most of the emissions and control it. But, it's a lot cleaner. And with technology, we can do that. But, we're basically in the wealthy countries going green at the expense of the developing countries that are emitting
Doing
all
the
this
dirty
stuff.
job. Yeah.
Yeah, so like you say, we can clean up our factories here, and then I use the word leakage. We leak to another country. You manufacture. We're not going to manufacture it here. And being in California, I constantly joke about Governor Newsom that he only breathes California air. Anything outside the borders of California, he doesn't breathe that. And so if there's larger emissions in China and India or Africa, that's okay. He doesn't breathe that air.
Is it the same rationale to nitrous oxide, methane? Is it the same CO2? Is it the same group of things? So they are not dangerous enough.
I do not think so. No, not in the quantities. Humanity's existence on this huge planet is so minute that the galactic forces made this Earth, I think the galactic forces are going to control it from here to infinity. We can't generate snowstorms. We can't generate tornadoes. Mother Nature is taking care of that. And yeah, humanity's ability to control the earth, I think, is just irrational.
So oil will last 100 years, and there is no dangers for the humanity, and no replacement with other things that can replace for our
Well,
materialistic.
we've had oil for a couple hundred years. I mean, that's when the earth populated from 1 to 8 billion. And because in that 200 years, we have all these products and fuels for transportation systems that we didn't have 200 years ago. Are we going to have oil in 100 years from now? I would say yes. 1,000 years from now, I would say yes. 10,000 years from now, I don't know. Of course, you and I aren't going to be here. But, this stuff doesn't last forever. I mean, the world's been around for billions of years, and we're basically taking out of it. The interesting thing is there's a lot more oil in the world than there is the exotic minerals and metals that go green. When you talk about the lithium and the cobalt, there's only certain countries that have that material, and they have limited amounts, whereas pretty much every country has oil. But we're using it to our benefit, and we don't want to waste it. We got to constantly focus on efficiencies and conservation, just like the caveman. Because if we waste it, we'll be like the caveman real soon, sooner than expected.
There is an article that says the following: only International Energy Agency is the only one institution among several 10 or more, that says that peak demand oil will be in 2030. All other longer than 2030.
Well, when you think about it, the Earth, when it was formed, has a lot of coal, a lot of oil, a lot of lithium, a lot of cobalt. And, certain countries have it, and we're exploring ways to get it and use it. And, is this stuff going to be around forever? No. Can we recycle it? That becomes, pretty expensive. And if you have a developing country, then the answer is obviously no, because it takes a lot of money to recycle these things. And so you want to use it and conserve as much as possible, because, we're talking about our, future societies, hundreds of years from now. Like we're living a great life today. When I say we, I want to be specific about that, because, of the 8 billion people on this earth, 80% of them, which is more than 6 billion people, are living on less than $10 a day. They can't subsidize themselves out of a paper bag. But the wealthy countries, we're going green. And, we're developing expensive ways to, generate electricity. And, so some of these developing countries may never join the Industrial Revolution.
Ronald, at the same time, some countries just reached the entire renewables for electricity. Among them are Albania, Bhutan, Ethiopia, Iceland, Nepal, Paraguay, and Democratic Republic of Congo. So no wealthy country in this list. How? Why?
Well, again, they don't have much electricity requirements either. A couple wind turbines might be more than enough power to
One
provide
turbine is enough.
That's right. More than enough. But again, if they're generating electricity, do they have anything to electrify? The people in, the list that you showed there, do those people have iPhones? Do they have television sets? And do they have EVs? But yeah, it's basically, and when you subsidize putting up a solar panel and a wind turbine, yeah, you can get your electricity. But when you take a look at what their demand is, their demand's pretty low. So if it's low, it's easy to meet 100% of what they need. But if they got a big demand, then you're talking, some serious money and some serious challenges.
Big oil are being considered bad guys, bad people. But
Mhm.
I do not see strong companies, big companies investing in renewables. They are expecting to big oil to invest. Why?
Well, let's talk about big oil. Big oil only exists, only exists because wealthy countries are addicted to the products and the fuels that come out of oil. The best way to get rid of oil, Armando, stop using the products, stop using the fuels. There's no reason for the oil industry to be around. But like I say, they're just the supply. It's the public that has a demand. And you remember Greta Thunberg, when she was accusing the United Nations, how dare you? Let's rephrase it. What she really meant was, how dare me, in one of the wealthier countries, continue to increase my demand for the products and my demand for the fuels manufactured from crude oil that makes my life more comfortable. That's what she really meant. Because, if she wants to set an example, stop using the products. There's no reason to use oil. Who needs the derivatives if you're not using the products? Who needs the fuels if all the airports are closed?
Yeah. Ronald, some oil companies are, in the past 10 years ago, 5 years ago, they made some movements to renewables investments. Statoil being Equinor, changing the name, Total to Total Energies and make some investments. Oil, American companies, they do not invest too much in renewables. How do you see the world in terms of big oil differences and why American companies are not considering, and some European companies are being back to the investments in the renewables. They are skeptic of this, no?
Well, I think when you talk about renewables like wind and solar, if they were a good financial investment, then the public would be investing in them. But it's a bad business investment. Take a look. You got the situation. You got free wind, you got free sunshine, and huge subsidies. And what's electricity pricing doing? It's going through the roofs because the wind and solar don't work most of the time, and so it's basically just a redundant system in addition to the system we've had in the past of coal, natural gas, hydro, and nuclear that provided continuous, uninterruptible electricity. So right now they are, quote, the backup to wind and solar because wind and solar don't work most of the time. So the only way wind and solar are progressing right now is because of all the subsidies. It's a bad business investment. No businessman is going to invest their dollars in something that doesn't work most of the time.
Ronald, going to the title again, what are the social changes that politicians are expecting to have in humanity or in countries or states to expect to reach this net zero? What are the social changes that they are?
Well, the social changes is basically stop using the products. Because, if you want to get rid of oil, you're getting rid of the 6,000 products we have in our daily lives. You're going to get rid of the fuels. There'll be no airports, there'll be no shipping terminals. We got, 50,000 merchant ships that won't be moving. We got, 20,000 commercial planes that won't be moving. The good thing about it, you would ground Air Force One. So that's the social change because, they basically want everybody to live on electricity. Well, you can't live on electricity because there's nothing to electrify without oil. And that's why there's no conversations because, again, if there's a backup plan where we can continue to have our products, hey, I'm all for getting rid of oil. Let's change to, some other product. But like I said, we've had 200 years to replace it, and we've been unable to do that. And so instead of replacing it, we're just going to put up wind and solar and ask people to change their lives. Well, that's a fool's game. That ain't going to happen. You change your life. I'm not going to change my life.
Let's see a comment from Luis. How the International Energy Agency expect to use only 15 or 20% of oil in 2050? Exactly the fraction the oil company sells today for not burner.
Well, we can use less oil if we continue to focus on efficiencies and conservation. Like I've said it before, we can't just waste it because we have it.
But efficiency, you mentioned the term that for me is fantastic. How can we increase efficiency? Can we do that?
One example. Let's talk about the EVs. When EVs came out, I thought that was a dumb idea. I thought the hybrid was a great idea because a hybrid, you instantaneously double your gas mileage and you buy hundreds of years to develop battery technology for batteries to run it. And, just like in the 1940s, the cars got, 10 to 12 miles to a gallon. Now they're getting 30, 40, and 50 to a gallon. And if you go to a hybrid, you're basically, further improving that. That's a way to improve efficiencies and, and conservations. You want to plan your trips instead of going to the market for bananas and coming home and going to the market to get apples and coming home. You want to plan your trip. So if you plan it, you can conserve as well. And, while we try and develop, is there a clone to crude oil? If there is, not only we can develop battery technologies, maybe we can develop something else and replace crude oil because it's not going to be here forever.
Yeah, that's right. We have hybrid vehicles, cars, light cars, but we do not have hybrid trucks, for instance. Do we?
No, not yet.
Why?
Well, first of all, they're fuel driven right now, and the only viable quote change has been the EV. And so, because I think most politicians have eliminated the hybrid from their brain, and because most auto manufacturers have been mandated to reduce their emissions so low for their entire fleet of vehicles, from the little cars, the big cars, the SUVs, their total emissions has to be so low. The only way to meet that target, they had to eliminate the gasoline engine in the hybrid. So a couple of years ago, a lot of them were going to be making hybrids. Now they're all into EVs to meet the regulations. You're going to see some hybrids, but not that many. And consequently, the trucking industry, that's a load, a big load. And so since there was, hybrids have been mentally eliminated in the politician's mind, the only way to get trucks to reduce their emissions, they got to go to EVs. Well, whoa, wait a minute, Armando, the Tesla battery weighs 1,000 pounds. Now the truck is a much heavier vehicle. The truck battery weighs 16,000 pounds. And today's
kilos of mine. Yeah.
In today's technology, the lithium and the cobalt, to make that large battery, you got to move like 8 million pounds of earth to extract the lithium and cobalt, manganese and nickel and et cetera, to make one battery.
But the hybrid solution, you have half of this demand. So the battery is not so big, but it's half the size of an EV, I suppose.
Well, exactly, right. Yeah, because the engine is charging the battery.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're not dependent on the battery.
You do not eliminate the problem of batteries. You only attenuate the problem only by half.
Well, like I say, you're allowing the battery It only has to run the car for a little bit, whereas the gasoline engine will pick up the rest of it. Whereas today,
How
you have to charge your EV to take it
so
out.
you see that cars, electrical vehicles, light cars, we can have hybrids in the future, and maybe a good solution, but not for trains, not for trucks, not for planes. Hybrid is not a solution for those different of EVs, cars only.
I'm not sure they've even thought about that for that, because that's not a big user. When you talk about the amount of fuel used in the world, it's interesting because I think we've talked about this. Before the pandemic in 2019, the world's consumption of gasoline hit a peak in 2019. Well, in 2019, COVID hit us. Well, since that time, the EVs have come, and now there's like 30 million EVs in the entire world. And today we have hundreds of millions of people not going to work as often because we're able to work remotely. And so you have hundreds of millions of people not driving as much and 30 million EVs on the road. And that peak in 2019, in 2023, they hit another peak because
Growing.
it's the EVs are second vehicles. They're low mileage vehicles. Most of the time they're parking in a garage. And if people want to go somewhere, they bring the workhorse vehicle out, which is, gasoline consumption. So yeah, we've come out of the, COVID environment and people are getting back to their normal lifestyles. And like I mentioned before, the elites have bought the EVs. The elites will continue to buy the EVs. But Armando, I think we are running out of the elites. Now we're getting down to the common folk. And we're talking just the common folk in the wealthy countries. The other 6 billion people, they may never have an automobile.
We have two comments from Luis. One example of energy efficiency in the USA is 33% of their highest loss with, I don't know what IRA is, not financial energy efficiency. I'm not aware of this comment.
Well, the main thing is, we have, we got our earth and we got all kinds of exotic minerals and metals and coals and oils. And we want to preserve it as long as we can because there's a lot of generations we hope are going to follow us and can enjoy the same lifestyle. And, I look at the 6 billion people living on less than $10 a day. They want to live the same lifestyle we're living. And, we basically would like to bring their lifestyle up a bit. And until they get access to the products that we take for granted, then they may never do that.
Yeah. He says that ion NA batteries is a reality. I'm not familiar with this technologies.
There's a lot of battery technology. It's in development. I mean, we're in the infancy of batteries. When you take a look at
research only, not
the mobile phone. Remember the mobile phone, the 1 pound mobile phone we used to have, which is now an iPhone. Yeah, battery technology, improved that way. It's going to improve on the vehicles as well, but you got to give it time, and I think we're just pushing the envelope, and economically, it's devastating to society because most people can't afford, that kind of change in their lifestyle. And again, we're only talking about the wealthy countries. The developing countries, they're so far behind us financially that they may never see what we see.
So could the conclusions be no social change, no zero emissions, no net zero for 2050?
Well, I looked at it this way, facetiously. If you eliminate oil before you have a replacement, we're going to lose billions of lives, because the shortages of food, medications, the products, transportation infrastructure is going to basically be devastating to society. One of the things I kind of joke that the homeless population, which is continuing to grow in the wealthy countries, that it's imposing all these costs on the people who can't afford it. And I say, yeah, get rid of oil, you can solve the homeless problem because all the tents and sleeping bags are made with oil. So, that's social change. And if you get rid of tents and sleeping bags, then the homeless population goes away. They'll have to live like the caveman. And it's crazy. You've probably heard changing the situation to financials, the unfunded pension liabilities. Here in the United States, we have Social Security, people retire, then they live for 50 or 60 years beyond and are collecting off that system they didn't pay much into, and then they collect for like 50 or 60 years. Well, the same thing when people retire from a business and get a pension, they live a long time, and there's unfunded pension liabilities. And I have joked on this one. You can solve that problem instantaneously. You get rid of oil because no one's going to live past 40. And then you take a look at the colleges. There would be no need for colleges because if there's no hospitals, you don't need doctors, and if there's no infrastructure, you don't need engineers. And it's crazy. So those are social changes, but it's like I say, we have a good life, and I think we can focus on improving other people's lives as well as continue to improve our own efficiencies and our own conservation. And what little Earth has in the way of oil or lithium or cobalt, we want it to last for millions of years for other people.
There's a very good point from Furlani. In countries with no relevant production of clean energy yet, does it make sense to have EVs? Let me give you my opinion first to give you the chance to. No, of course not. In Brazil, for instance, we do not have a structure, we do not have enough investments in the grid and the systems. And we have ethanol, is a high level development, technology developed in the past. So it isn't necessary to have electricity for EVs, in my opinion.
I would rephrase his question. Talk about the production of clean energy. I would rephrase it. It's a production of clean electricity. Because, that's what we're trying to do is generate clean electricity. But, a lot of countries, Finland, UK, they're all going nuclear. You talk about emission-free, continuous, uninterruptible electricity. I mean, that's nuclear. I think we're investing in the wrong arena. Instead of trying to utilize all the exotic minerals and metals that the Earth has, we can, fine tune. And, a lot of ships are powered by nuclear, the submarines, the aircraft carriers. Why can't it be good for other people?
Yeah, that's right. Perfect rephrasing from Furlani. Let me show another comment from Luis. That's interesting. I agree that the energy efficiency is route to decrease oil consumption. Yes, but which energy? Electricity efficiency? So the same question.
Well, both. It's actually both.
Fuel, liquid
you
fuel.
basically, because no reason to have lights on in the house during the day. Again, you want to conserve your need for electricity, and you conserve for products because you want to. It's just like if you're going on a hiking trip. You're going to need a big backpack if you're going to dispose of everything. But if you can, reuse things, you can take less on your back. So, yeah, we have to focus on both, reducing our need for electricity. And like I say, when we can make the iPhones more efficient, then it requires less electricity to charge them. So we've been doing that, and I think we'll be continuing to do that.
Mhm. Yeah, that's right. So he is confirming your thoughts. All energy
Yes,
efficiency. Yeah. Okay.
exactly.
Electricity and oil and
Yeah.
coal and so.
Yeah, we don't
That's
want to be a
great.
waste. We don't
Thank you
want to be a
so
waste.
much, Ronald Stein.
Don't want to be a wasteful society.
Yeah,
Just because we have it, we don't
yeah,
want to
that's
waste
right.
it.
And yeah, and I suppose that the waste nowadays are so big. We have space, room to let's say optimize the systems, energy systems
Exactly.
in general.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure, Ronald Stein.
Okay, Armando, you have a great day.
The next California governor. I'm voting for you.
I wish I could talk to him. I wish he would talk to
Great
me.
time. Yeah, yeah. I will invite you to discuss it.
Okay. Have a great
Bye.
day.
Thank you
Okay.
so much. Great day
Take
for
care.
you too. Bye bye.